In this one, we'll be looking at two of the more popular pieces printed in the Swiss Liebemuster pattern, which is often referred to by its nickname of Alpenflage. If you want to learn more about its history overall, you can check out the History of video on it, link to which can be found in the description above as well as at the end. The Alpenflage pattern, named as a joke after the Swiss Alps, is definitely one of the most interesting patterns out there. Though no longer a standard issue pattern, its design has been copied by not only the Swiss Armed Forces for their Woodland Taz 90, Desert Taz 07, and most recently multicam colored inspired Multi-Umfeld Tarnmuster 16, but also by many commercial companies, most notably the American skateboarding company Supreme. Over the years, the company has released a series of jackets, hats, and accessories in the pattern, some of which appears to be repurposed Swiss issue surplus. Anyway though, let's actually look at one of the first pieces in the pattern, which was the M70 uniform that consisted of a jacket, backpack, and pants, though there's a whole lot more to it than that. It was said in the History of video, and it'll be said again here. This uniform is the Swiss Army knife of military uniforms because of the sheer amount of what's going on with the design. Looking closely at the jacket first, it took the webbing, pouches, packs, and essentially most other external components one would expect a soldier to be wearing around that time and incorporated it into the actual uniform. In a way, the uniform itself is a sort of suspension and load-carrying system, as it was primarily worn as an oversuit, granted with varying degrees of success and popularity amongst the wearers. This concept is briefly touched on in the other video, but let's actually look at all these sections and components. Before we do, it's important to know that with the M70 being an issued item between the late 1950s and early 1990s, a few things were changed during that time. Nothing super substantial, but generally things like hooks, fabric, and reinforced areas appear to have been changed between years and batches. Starting on the front of the jacket, the main components of it were a built-in hood, which featured an adjustable drawstring, as well as a camouflaged veil which could unravel from the top to cover the wearer's face. When the hood wasn't being used, it could be buttoned up towards the shoulders to get it out of the way. A fold-down collar, which includes 3 different snap ends on the wearer's right to adjust its size to various tightnesses. On either side of this are your basic shoulder tabs for rank. Below that are 2 chest pockets, one single flapped one on the wearer's right and 2 separated ones on the wearer's left. Inside the right and one of the left pockets is a partition, allowing for a total of 5 Sturmgewehr 57s or SIG SG 510 magazines. The flaps themselves are a bit interesting too, as the right one features 3 snap buttons, along with corners sewn onto it, while the left partitioned ones see 1 corner sewn. These were both done so to allow them to be closed around the box shape the pockets would take when completely full. Above these were small loops with a pair of rectangular-shaped metal buckles, which are used to attach the semi-integrated backpack, which we'll be looking at in a moment. Next to the partition pockets on the left was a clip of sorts, which could be used to connect a variety of things, but was primarily used to hold the helmet, which itself included a D-shaped ring for easy on-off functionality. Moving down towards the waist were 2 more massive pockets. Things like rifle grenade magazines, protective leg bands, protection sheets, toiletries, and rations were put in between these 2. They're designed in a rather interesting manner, seeing the sides of the flaps also being connected to the pocket, which also featured 3 snaps on the flap and 2 pairs each on the pocket itself. Again, this was done to allow a level of adjustment depending on how much the wearer would have in them at any given time, with the connected corners covering the sides when completely filled. On top of the left sleeve was a smaller pocket which was meant to house a first aid kit. Going down slightly, and the elbows were reinforced a few different ways. In this instance, it's made up of the same waterproof material you'd find on a poncho or rain jacket. Below that were zippers that could adjust the size of the cuffs. On the back were 3 more pockets, the right side one which featured a single snap and exterior pen slots, which was used for cooking supplies such as canteens and cutlery, a central pocket which too featured a single snap closure used for additional cooking equipment, and a larger left pocket which featured 3 snaps on the flap, which could be used to store cleaning kits. Now these were just the general purposes of these pockets, but with anything like this they could be used at the wearer's discretion. Going around the jacket, you'll notice a few button tabs which were to hold a belt in place that could be used to attach things like holsters, pouches, and so on. Then to top it off, we have an elastic adjustment band at the bottom which could be pulled in and secured via buttons. On the inside were 2 additional sections. The smallest and easiest to access was another pocket which could be used to store hearing protection, smaller knives, and personal items. The second section, on the other hand, was far larger. Essentially, it's a very large pocket that runs more than halfway down the back. This little slot could store soft goods such as spare clothes, blankets, and really anything that could double as a sort of cushion between one's back and the attachable backpack. Additionally, on the inside were 2 straps which hung freely from an opening located on either side of the chest. These straps go down towards the waist and appear to link up to free hanging buckles on the pants, which were likely to hold the jacket in place. Now onto the backpack. This little thing consisted of 3 pouches, the middle for rain and snow gear, along with an emergency stove and equipment for washing clothes, then 2 outer sections which could hold rifle grenades. The center flap and compartment also included tabs, which were used to secure either a pickaxe or entrenching tool. Now, the most interesting bit about this was that it had no shoulder straps. At least none in the traditional sense. These front straps simply went over the shoulders and hooked onto the front rectangular buckles. The bottom section was then secured by way of an adjustable strap that went around the wearer's waist. Now this brings us to the pants. These don't feature as many pockets, but made up for it in customization options. Similar to the collar, they included 3 snap options to adjust the waist, along with a button fly, but went an extra level by including 2 buttons for every hole. They featured 2 standard waist pockets, but also 2 zippered sections behind them, which allowed access to any other pieces or uniforms worn underneath. Now, this whole waist section is one of the 2 big areas that saw major variations, as the overall shape of suspenders seemed to vary from version to version, such as seen here where one of them is a thinner H-style, while the other has them much wider and separate from one another. Additionally, it seems certain pairs of these pants included belt loops while others saw them omitted. Now, here are 2 small tabs with buckles which were mentioned earlier. The tabs of the jacket simply attach to them to ensure they don't move around too much. The side cargo pockets included 3 buttons, with 2 sets of snaps, one on the pocket itself for each, and featured on the inside more of the rubber waterproof material, which backed a number of slots that could accommodate hand grenades, as well as other magazines, along with really whatever else the wearer wanted. Now on these pockets were another set of adjuster straps, which could tighten or loosen the pant legs. The second area that saw major variations was seen around the knees. Many versions had the same rubber waterproof material as seen on the jacket as a sort of reinforcement. They would vary in length, with some, such as this one here, having the reinforcement integrated inside of the cloth rather than on top of it. Towards the bottom were another series of tabs with snap buttons which allowed users to loosen or tighten them. Below that were pull strings located at the very bottom of the pants for yet more adjustment capabilities. Finally, on the back right side was a pocket closed by a single snap button. Now, the pants themselves are often quite beat up or modified. Here, for example, you can see the free hanging buckles were cut off of this pair, while this other one features a number of repairs. Okay, so after looking at all these pieces, you may be wondering what their overall value is. Well, it sort of varies, but they are still on the cheaper end. They've been on the surplus market for the better part of 30 years now, but are still pretty easy to source. However, the prices have been creeping up slowly a bit. The jacket itself is the most popular item among the 3 and usually goes anywhere from $30 to $60 US. The pack is not as abundant and often has retrofits done to it so it can be worn on its own, but a good conservative price is about $15 to $30. The pants are a bit of an oddity when it comes to price. They're not as easy to source on websites like eBay, for example, but if you look hard enough, you can find them pretty cheap on a number of surplus sites. One pair here was bought for about $15. Finding the right size, though, is another story. Again, there are quite a number of different versions out there, seeing slightly different camouflage shades, zippers, buttons, fabrics, components, and so on, but overall the features and orientations of everything is mostly universal. At some point during their fielding, though, the idea of just field uniforms was determined not to be enough, and so the Taz 83 was born. Where the M70 features everything one would need to haul just about everything, granted sometimes uncomfortably, especially in wet weather, the 83 was the exact opposite. Lightweight, basic, and streamlined. These were made up of a jacket, pair of pants, and cap. Starting with the cap, they are pretty straightforward, being a non-rigid, almost crusher-style design, which featured an elastic back to accommodate various sizes. These are becoming slightly harder to find compared to other pieces, but are still relatively cheap at about $10 to $15. Regarding the jacket, it saw a complete overhaul compared to the other one. These have been said to have been uniforms for non-field purposes, which justifies their much simpler design. The fabric was a lot lighter and saw the pattern go for a cleaner and more defined look. The basic zippered front was kept, as well as the shoulder tabs for ranks, the left shoulder pocket, albeit in a much smaller orientation, and the cloth tabs used to hold up a belt, which were seen around the waist area. The last feature is 2 chest pockets with a pair of snap buttons, with the one on the wearer's left seeing 3 slots for pens or pencils. Price for a surplus one like this is about $20 to $30. Regarding the pants, they took on a much simpler design, as well as even seem to be in the same vein as the BDU. They feature a zipper fly and a single snap closure, along with a few extra belt loops as the built-in suspenders were removed, though for good measure metal buckles were kept if one wanted to use a separate set. Basic waist pockets were kept, as were mid-leg cargo pockets, though in a much more conservative manner, seeing them shrink in size and use only a pair of snap buttons each. Finally, on the back, the same rear pocket was kept, but is closed by a strip of Velcro. Total cost for repair, about $15 to $25. Where the M70 is popular among outdoor enthusiasts, the M83 style ones appear to be used more with the streetwear scene, as they are the pattern most often associated with lifestyle and designer brands. This has caused them to be a bit more sought after, and because of that, a number of said companies and outlets will get them and mark them way up, along with occasionally adding some patches or minor modifications. Now, there are a few other items made in this pattern, such as helmet covers, flak vests, coveralls, shelter halves, and rain jackets, but we'll save those for another video. The Swiss Alpenflage, as it's so commonly called, is a very interesting pattern, and many seem to look at it as something of a joke because of its ineffective dominantly red color. Though this is somewhat true in many environments, it successfully served the Swiss Armed Forces for nearly half a century. Since its phase out, it has gained a new life in the surplus outdoor and fashion scenes, and will likely to continue to go on for many years to come. Hopefully this video showcasing two of the most used uniforms in the pattern was informative and entertaining. Be sure to subscribe or check back regularly for more close-up on combat clothing videos, CCC for short, right here on Uniform History.